Hey everybody, what's good? It's Wes. So master studies are a thing I'm a big fan of. I tell a lot of my students, a lot of my mentees, master studies are a great way to grow and grow quickly, but sometimes you may not have a lot of time. You may not be able to have the time to dedicate 20 or 30 hours to making a stroke for stroke Rembrandt copy or something. But I'm here to tell you that master studies doesn't necessarily mean making a one-for-one reproduction of something. You can do a master study just by looking at some of your favorite art, but looking at it with intent on learning. That's what we're going to do today. We're going to be taking a look at 3 of my favorite Magic the Gathering pieces of art of all time. And we're going to be breaking down what works on them. We're going to look at the values. We're going to look at colors. We're going to look at composition and structure and design and all that stuff. I'm really excited about this. This is something different for the channel, but we're about to head into the new year. And I want to try some secret sauce. I want to try some of this and see how it works. If you all find this helpful, this is the type of stuff that I do provide on my Patreon. But I wanted to show it in the public eye and also talk about just how cool Magic the Gathering art is. I've been fortunate to work on a card game of Varia from Guildhouse Games. And I always study, I have reverence for people that come before me. So I always look and study good Magic the Gathering, good card art, to kind of learn from it and kind of see what I can improve as an artist. And before we get started, I want to say I will have a link in the description below. If you want to go and purchase any of these pieces of art, I will have a link directly to the artist's website where they have print shops and all that stuff. And what I'll actually do is I'll probably go and I'll try to find the actual print and just link to the print directly, because supporting the artist is a big deal. Also, these are all Magic the Gathering cards, so if you go to TCG Player or Channel Fireball or some sort of marketplace, if you want to buy these cards, feel free to do so. I'll have a link to that stuff in the description as well. These aren't like super mega expensive cards by any means. In fact, I think some of them, if not all of them, are commons. Maybe there's an uncommon there. But anyway, that's besides the point. But yeah, let's get into it. Let's talk about master studies. Let's talk about design sensibilities and break down some of the coolest art, in my opinion, that you're ever gonna see. Let's get to it. All right, so here we are getting started. We're going to be starting with really, I think, one of the most just dramatic pieces of art I think I've ever seen, but especially for Magic, it's perfect. And so some general things and topics that we're going to talk about. What makes effective card art versus, let's say, just making a painting for, a client, or, I'm going to make some prints, I'm going to sell some canvas stuff, whatever. What makes card art is design. The card art has to tell the story of what the card does. So the reason why all of these kind of share some common themes, not in regards to like content and narrative, but common themes in regards to like large silhouettes and good contrast and really strong shapes and things like that. These need to be seen on a tiny scale, which is very, of course, because they're on a card. But what a lot of people don't realize is they have to share the color with the Magic card. So like your white cards primarily are going to have a lot of white or a lot of muted tones. Your black cards are going to be low key, kind of darker art. There's a lot of thematic things in regards to telling the story of the card, but also, and I think one of the most important things, you have to be able to know what this card is the moment it hits the playfield. So the moment somebody plays a card, even if you're across the table and you see the card hit upside down, you need to know what that card is. And that's difficult. That's not an easy task. I've been very fortunate to be able to work with Varia and Guildhouse Games, And that's one of the things we discuss before I do every single card thing is, okay, how are we going to make this card stand out to where if somebody plays it, let's say you're watching a pro league event or whatever, if somebody plays this card, the impact of the board has to change. Like, people viewing have to be like, oh man, they played such and such. You have to build that into it as well. So not only do you have to make effective art, and not only does it have to look good, not only does it have to follow all the fundamentals of making a creative picture and kind of a beautiful illustration, but it has to function as a design element within the gameplay mechanics. So that's what I mean. They cover all of their bases here. But without further ado, let's dig into this one. This is Thalia, Guardian of Thraben, or Thraben, maybe, I don't know. So this actually has a lot of different art. This has been reprinted, I think, 3 or 4 times. But this is my favorite art interpretation of it. This is Jana Schirmer and Johannes Voss, and they nailed it. So the first thing I like to do anytime I see a piece of art that I really, really like is I come in and I basically get rid of all the color. And I see, does it still work as black and white? And this one absolutely does. There's a lot going on here. So the first thing we notice is the great shape of the silhouette. The figure doing a very triumphant pose, looking up, having the sword, basically either rallying troops or, guarding, being just an overall badass. And the thing I want to bring out is the design of how this composition works. I think this one is all about storytelling. I actually think the storytelling and the lighting are the focus of this. So it's not, the focal point's the face, the focal point's the sword, the focal point's the grass, the focal point's the scabbard. None of that stuff. I think the focal point is the mood of this one. And really, let me grab my glove here. And so you see these shapes. So something I want to point out is, let me get my brush tool here. Got that. Bring this down. Something I want to talk about. Your eye stays in the composition, and that's pretty critical. I know as far as a card game, the whole point of the card game is to play cards, the functionality of the cards and the way the design mechanics work together. But I am positive that the art is one of the primary drivers of the success of Magic the Gathering. So what you want to do is you want to keep your viewer invested in the art piece, because you're now looking and really noticing the card in every aspect of it. So effectively, what this is doing, you're going to notice we have the sword right here, kind of pointing in. You have an arm coming down. You have the body mechanics coming down. And then you have kind of legs pointing up. You have the scabbard coming across. But then you have these perfectly placed, and I'm talking like mwah, chef's kiss, perfectly placed grass. This is coming in. But this is coming up and around and out. This one is coming down. This one's coming back in. You see what I mean? There's so many good... There's some grass. Then you have your cape coming in. A lot of people would think this is flowing out, but I would argue that it's flowing back in. Everything is either blocking you from leaving. So this is kind of coming up and kind of blocking you from being able to leave. And you'll notice there's not a lot of detail out here on the outskirts, which means it's not our primary focus. But even the light of the clouds caps off and blocks you into this composition. So you have this, you have these diagonals right here. So essentially, if you're looking for it, you can see that there are ways that, like, this is blocked off, this is blocked off, this is blocked off, Yeah, these shapes right here, this is blocked off, these are blocked off. Everything's drawn you to the middle. And now your middle is also where you have your highest contrast. So you're really focusing on this. But I want to show you the number one thing that I think is doing the heaviest lifting on this piece. Okay. A lot of people, your eye, as human beings, our eyes naturally look at contrast. So a lot of people will think, okay, there's going to be a few things that are really driving this piece. So this is our primary one. We maybe have the hair right here. We have this right here. We have a little bit of the, I would say some of the darkers right here. And you notice this is kind of near the middle. Maybe some of this stuff as well. That's all well and good. And that definitely tells the story. Do you want to know what I think is doing the heaviest lifting out of this entire piece? That. Now, why is that? This is telling us where our light is coming from. So what I want to prove, let me take off the value, and you'll notice that the colors, we'll talk about that in a minute, but this is telling us where the light is coming from and how intense the light is. So normally artists love painting overcast days. Whenever it's slightly cloudy, not too much, because what you're allowed to do then, there's no harsh lighting, so you can color things their local color. You can use the hue that a thing is, and it's not going to be impacted too much by really hardcore cast shadows or like really bright, blown out supernova sunlight. You know what I mean? Like, that's not really going to impact stuff. You're going to just really be able to go in there, color a thing the color that it is, and it's going to look pretty good. A lot of midtones. Art's not easy, but that's more of your easier lighting that you can do. However, this is not that. This is not just an overcast day. This is a super stormy, cloudy day. And what that means is now you have hardly any light. That's why this kind of runs a little darker as far as the tonality. I would say it starts at the midtones because, yeah, I mean, if we look at our color wheel right here, and I just go and let's just grab this. I mean, the lightness is at 92%, so that's a 9 on a 10-point scale. And that's kind of our lightest light. We have some blowouts right here that are just pure white. But a lot of this stuff is going to be in your 15%, 35%, 42%, 51%. A lot of midtone stuff going on here. So that's where a lot of this piece lives, is in the midtones, which is why these bright highlights really pop out. But coming back to this, the sun is above all of these thick clouds. As it's piercing through little tiny bits of these clouds where they're separate or not quite as thick, that light is going to shine through. But since the density of air is still so high, not a ton of light is going to get through. However, this shows us where the light is coming from, the intensity of the light, and putting it in our brain that there are gaps in the visibility of the clouds. So I would argue that this right here allows us to have this. Because this is true right here, because this works, all of this can happen. Does that make sense? So that brings up a good point. Like, okay, do you need something that grounds your lighting? It helps, but who was it? Who's the director of photography for Lord of the Rings? Andrew Lesnie? Is that who it was? Where Elijah Wood asked, they were setting up for a scene or something, and Elijah Wood asked, "Hey, this looks really nice, but where's the light coming from?" and it was a long day or whatever, and he was kind of exasperated, and he looks over and he says, the same place the music is coming from. As you don't need a place that's where the light comes from, and I see. It's nice to logically think about, but it's not necessary. However, this really adds to that impact because it is here. It is something that we can see, and it grounds us in the reality of the piece. And then just a quick thing to discuss is the light, or the color, rather. So because we're in the midtones, you're seeing a lot of like muted colors. So if we just pay attention here to our color wheel, you're going to see a lot of beautiful muted grays. I'm just a huge fan of muted grays. If you get my simplifying color theory videos and stuff like that, like, I think muted tones are the power of color. There's very rarely anything above like mid-saturation here. You know what I mean? And what's really funny is, like, if you want to talk about warm and cool colors, you see how this looks really warm in context, because we also have this pink and stuff right here. But then you go right here, and then you notice that it's in the purples. It's still pretty cool. So yeah, context is a big deal. But anyway, notice that this is our color palette right here. I mean, our color palette is a very muted. There's not a huge, like, there's no like, oh, well, I'm gonna, it's light outside, so since the sunlight's coming out, it's gotta be orange light. Like, that would crush anything that's happening in this piece. So yeah, there's just good storytelling in this one. I love the Dutch tilt. I love the Dutch angle. I love just the way the overall composition is. Because yeah, I think it keeps you in the art. It keeps you engaged. Just masterfully done. So what can we learn from this? Box your stuff in. Like, literally, use these fun composition techniques. Point some arrows. Figure out how do I want my viewer's eye to kind of go through my piece. And yeah, I think context is a big deal. Really put the scene, put the mood above all else, and I think you're going to have a lot of impact, because this is storytelling 101 right here. Beautiful. Like, you can make up your entire own short story just based on this one image, and that makes for an impactful image. So, Thalia, Guardian of Thraben, by Jana Schirmer and Johannes Voss. Beautiful. One of my favorites, bar none. So now let's move over to another piece by one of the most prolific Magic the Gathering artists of all time. Alright, so Duskborne Skymarcher, man. This one's from Ixalan. I remember this one. Seb McKinnon. Anyone who's a fan of Magic the Gathering art, or even contemporary fantasy art in general, traditional, digital, doesn't matter. You know who Seb McKinnon is. Seb McKinnon is one of those names that's just on the Mount Rushmore of contemporary fantasy art. And this is one of the reasons why. So, I love so much about this piece. I don't even know where to begin, man. Yeah, I do. Let's talk about values. So, once again, how does this read as a value comp? It reads perfect. This is, it's not quite as impactful as the color version, I think. I think the color really does a lot of incredible stuff here. But this still completely works as a piece of card art by itself, because you can tell just because of this insane contrast here in the middle. At a very small size, it works. So I'm a big fan. If you've been following the channel for a while, or if you've been following any of my stuff for a while, I'm a big fan of melding the traditional look in a digital space. And Seb does this incredibly well, almost giving a like sfumato effect on these clouds. And like, look at some of these edges right here. They're lost edges, they're melded into the background. They're not haphazard by any means. Like, these are all completely designed. But it's all part of itself. Like, the piece reads together. And he's not afraid to blend things in. He's not afraid to smudge stuff into each other. Of course, you have this strip of bright, bright light that acts as not only your horizon line, but essentially this is, you know exactly where to look, and you want to know why? Because our composition, and see, I'll even take out the color here. Our composition is a cross, man. It is literally, you come across here, and then you do that. There you go, here's your card. That's your composition. It doesn't have to be fancy. It just works. I mean, where do you want someone to look? Oh, I want them to look in the middle. Go for it. You'll hear a lot of people talk about never put your topic or your focus in the middle, because that's boring. That's boring. You want it to be over here, and you want to use the golden ratio and go, blah, 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 blah. Don't worry about all that. Seriously, don't worry about all that. What is amazing about this is the fact that it retains its interest while being fairly not complex in its composition. But I might argue that out of all three that we're going to look at today, this one's actually the most complex, because the complexity comes from everything else. God, it's just such a good balance. There's good painterly strokes up here to where there's not quite defined clouds. It's not like he used a cloud brush and he came in and I'm going to do a few stamps up here to make my clouds. No. You can see the edges. You can see the brushwork. You can see these things. And as these colors start to kind of meld and sing together, beautiful work. I think one of the most impactful parts about this, by the way, are the hands. The hands have that beautiful subsurface scattering. The light is so intense that it's piercing through the skin of this phantom, I guess, because like there ain't no legs here, and this is all kind of wispy going into beautiful like ink. It looks like ink that you like pour into water, and then it just melds out. Just gorgeous way to incorporate some special effects work into a very traditional feeling painting, which is another reason. Seb, he's a master at mixed media. He understands the principles behind kind of everything visually and knows how to incorporate each piece, the most impactful part of each media, into his pieces. Unreal. I know he has some tutorials out and stuff, or not tutorials necessarily, but like there's a lot of videos written about his work, and then he's had a lot of like write-ups and stuff in Imagine FX magazine, a lot of his work shown. And if you go and follow his work, Seb just, I don't know, he just gets it on a fundamental level. He knows what he wants. He's gonna go for it. It's very confident. It's not wishy-washy. Every decision is planned. And I think the hands are a big part of that here, because these hands right here with the orange and the reds are showing us how intense that light source is. It's further selling us on it's dusk. A Duskborne Skymarcher. Here's a person that flies, that comes out during dusk, meaning it's a Duskborne Skymarcher. That's what we're looking at right now. You know what I mean? Like, once again, it feeds into the narrative of the design of the card. I think there's so many good things to look at. Something to keep in mind. Notice how there's detail here, and I know this is a lower resolution version of this piece. There is detail here. The ornamentation of the of the outfit. But you'll notice here, it's getting some of that, what is this called? Fresnel light? I can't remember the exact term. But basically, it's light that matches the color of the light source. Directly. Like, there's no change. It doesn't get influenced by a local color. It is basically just that exact same color. So if I were to, like, come up here and, like, color pick, you can see that if you have that, but then you come over here and you have this ornamentation, you see how it's fairly, this blends in pretty well with what we have. And I just color picked from here. The same thing. You're going to see a lot of these lights happening throughout. So it's picking up the ambient light, but it's doing it directly. Like, it's almost a one-to-one, which just ties these things together. And of course, that's a little overkill. And there's absolutely no nuance in my version, but you get the gist of it. But yeah, the amazing thing is this is the only place where actual red comes into play, which I think is smart. You have very analogous colors. I mean, you're gonna have your orange, your yellows, and your reds. Not a lot of blues here. Really, I think here we have our grays. Let me switch back to that. So yeah, I mean, this is basically, a lot of people will be like, oh, look at these greens. I love these greens. I love these, the blues. There is none. There is none. You just have a lower saturated yellow. It's going towards gray. So in context, and this is a very, very, very fast relative color theory study. In context, if you have a super bright yellow, and then you just desaturate that and keep it essentially the same value, guess what it's going to look like? Next to that, gray is blue next to yellow, because it's going further towards the cool side of the color wheel. People go around the color wheel a lot. I urge you to go through the color wheel. Go through it. Go from yellow to blue. Not around, but across. I think you're going to have a much more enjoyable experience that way. But this is a perfect showcase of that. Because you have these colors that sing so well together. Just like you got this, then you got that red in here. And then you get your grays, which you have this, you have that. And see, that one's just more of a desaturated muted yellow. I mean, that's essentially what brown is, but still, you get my drift. So we're very much on this side of the color wheel. We're on the very warms, a lot of this, and then you're just playing around with the hue, or the saturation rather, and the value, in order to make our piece pop. But yeah, genius work from here. I would say one of the main takeaways from this one is that Seb McKinnon is a genius, but otherwise, analogous colors can be your best friend, because you can then focus on things such as value to tell your story a little bit better. And don't be afraid to keep your composition basic. If the painting's good, it's good. I don't care where the thing is. It's not that this would be a way better, piece of art if it was like some crazy angle and it was crazy splash art like League of Legends and woo! Like, that's cool and that's fun, but don't feel like you have to do that. I've always said it doesn't matter if you're painting, a big dragon fight and something big and epic and a huge battle scene, or if you're drawing an apple or painting an apple. They should have the same amount of interest. For a viewer, they should be able to look at it and be like, I don't know how you do that. Wow, like, look at just the forms and the shapes. Everything's the same on a canvas, right? Every topic that you paint, they follow the same rules. Shape design, language, how well can the viewer interpret what you're putting on there. These are the key fundamentals of good card art, but I would also argue these are key fundamentals in art in general. Visual communication is key, because visuals, we have our beautiful paintings and our colors and brushstrokes. Communication is also a massive part of that, right? So, whenever we talk about art, we are talking about visual communication, and Seb McKinnon is one of the best to ever do it, bar none. Duskborne Skymarcher, incredible card. Buy yours today. But let's move on to literally my favorite Magic the Gathering card ever printed, just based on the art. It's my favorite piece of Magic art of all time, and I can't wait to dive into this one and tell you all why. Comfort food right here, man. Skeleton Archer by Randy Vargas. So, I'm gonna fanboy out for a minute. Randy Vargas is actually one of the reasons I decided to kind of change career paths. His art is so evocative to me. I don't know what, well, I do know what it is about it, and we're gonna discuss that. But he literally, his art is so good, it made me change career paths. So, take that as you will. But this is the card, this is the piece of Magic the Gathering art that literally, when I saw it, I don't know what wiring in my brain connected, but I was like, I know what I want to do for the rest of my life. And I want to make art like this forever. It might sound hyperbolic, but it's really not. And here's the thing. I probably come back to this piece, Skeleton Archer, and it's funny. I can tell you because I play it in Magic all the time. It's a 4-drop, so it's a 3. Let's see if I can remember this. It is a 3 generic mana, 1 black, so 4-drop. It's a 3/3, and I think the text says something like, whenever Skeleton Archer enters the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to any target. I think that's what it is. I use this thing religiously, man. This thing's a beast of a card. He's a good removal spell. He's a good sniper. The art is good. The card's good. Like, come on, man. It's the best of all time. But but genuinely, I think that this piece of card art is perfect. I think it's perfect. I don't use that lightly. Let's talk about why. One, God, I mean, I think what I was going to say earlier is I probably come back and study this once a month, twice a month, and have since I've seen it. There's still so much to unpack. There's still so much to look at. So I'm going to do my best to discern what I love so much about it, but I think that's the point. I think that's why I'm so enthralled with this, is I can't quite pin down why it's so good, why it's so perfect for me. Why this works at such a high level in every way, in brushwork, in design sense, in lighting, in contrast, and value. Man. Okay, so let's first of all, of course, do our main thing. Let's look at the values. So does this work without the color? Yeah. I would say it's equally as effective without the color. Just because the shapes are so freaking good, man. But of course, once again, we go back to the design sense of the leading lines. So let's say if we were to come over here, let me grab the red again. So if we were to have leading lines, we have our arrow coming in here. We have this kind of pinning off the side right here. We have this angle. Not only do we have the quiver that's holding the arrows, but you have the tree detail that's doing the same thing, right? You have this tree detail that's also putting little speed bumps for you to not leave the composition. Then you have this tree is kind of following this right here. You see what I'm saying? You have this angle. You have this angle. Everything is keeping you right where you need to be. Right into this main area. And then, I mean, let's not even get started on the actual tree trunk. Like, look at how many leading lines You have, I mean, thousands. There's such a good control of value here that, here, let me get rid of that. Yes. Okay. Our main value structure, let me move this over. Highlight. Yeah. So, and then you have your kind of smoke here on the, right here, just to kind of give you a little bit of that mood, a little bit of that flavor. But everything else is extraordinarily muted. Now you have your darker darks right here, you know, that's going to give you and show you some of this form and some of the shadow and things like that. And like here on the quiver and right here. But everything else is really low contrast, I think. I do think the way that he has stacked his values as these branches get further away, they start blending more in to this kind of gray color that you have in the background. That's basic atmospheric perspective. As something gets further away from the viewer, more of the atmosphere is going to come into play, and it's going to dictate not only the color, but also the contrast and the value of whatever is approaching your very, very back of the background. It's a masterclass because you have your shapes that can read right down here. The moment this hits the field, I know exactly what it is. Even at this size, you know. And it's funny, little spoiler alert, I do keep this, my navigator window. This is the exact size of a magic card of the art. Because I took, I have a whole bookcase full of magic cards, but I would take a card and I would hold it up next to my monitor and then size this navigator window to make sure that it reads well. So at any point I can look up at my Photoshop window, and I've done this in a number of my painting softwares and save the UI. I want to make sure it reads at card level. And this one does, absolutely does. I think the heavy lifting on this really is coming from that highlight right here. The highlight, and of course the skull. The skull is just so well rendered. It's a different style. It's not like photorealistic or anything, but it has such good storytelling. That decay, like the nasty like webbing and the teeth rotted out, and like there's so much good stuff, man. This is a gothic artist's dream. A wet dream right here, man. Beautiful armor. I actually it's funny, I feel like I owe Randy Vargas like royalties. I literally completely aped the way that he does this armor. Completely. Anytime I do armor, I do it like this. Unwittingly, like whatever. Like what I do is I come in and I will show you exactly what I do. I will come in and at first I'll put in my mid-tone. You know, I'll block in a mid-tone or whatever. Then I'll get a nice kind of painterly brush. And then I'll come in and do the shape. So then I'll kind of either mark out a shape like this. And then I'll come in with a little bit of a highlight here, make it smaller, that sort of thing. Then, you know, you come in with a kind of a nice angle brush, and then you can make the shapes, and then you start getting something that resembles armor. You know what I mean? Like, and then you can just kind of play around with these the nuances and the way this stuff is. But yeah, this is absolutely, like I said, I feel like I owe him royalties, man, because that's how I do armor now. Like, I just love it. I think it's perfect. I think it's so cool. It's painterly, it's chaotic, but you can still tell what it's supposed to be and what it is. Just very, very cool. And then yeah, you can do some lighter stuff right here. Let's say you're putting in some lines or like a structure thing right here. You can do something like this. And then really where this takes off is whenever you add that really bright specular highlight. You come in here, you get a nice little wet brush, You come in with a pure white. You do some of this action. Oh, dude, that's money. That is money. Anyway, let's talk about the color. So, once again, do you notice something? It's very much like Duskborne Skymarcher. Do you notice anything? Analogous colors. Analogous colors. We are very much living in the warms creeping towards the cools. So you have your reds, you have your purples or magentas, violets, whatever you'd like to call it. And then we start getting a little bit into the blues. Very tiny amount. But look at how impactful, because we have our colors right here. Let's do, sure, do that one. Because, okay, so here's our kind of color pass right here. But you're going to notice where the smoke is. We slightly warm it, but it's the grays. The grays are absolutely the bridge. So you're going from your warm hues. You're going from something like a cooler, a cooler red, or like you got your purples here. Then you got, let's say, it's like a pure kind of gray. And then if you start slowly creeping in, we're still close to the gray, but you start slowly creeping in more of the yellow, it really starts to sing, and it makes this purple pop, which is why this right here is so impactful. Why the arrowhead, one, it's in complete focus, but you notice how it's surrounded by the grays. So you're getting this really nice gradient going from warm to cool, or cool to warm, I should say. The same thing here for the tree. So it doesn't really make sense that this tree would have this like yellow-green color on it until you remember that that is the color of our smoke. That is the color of that smoke coming in. It's so good, man. I cannot put into words how good this card is. Like, it's perfect. This is art goals. For me, my goal is to make something this evocative at least one time in my career. A functionally evocative piece that's structurally sound. There's no spare brush mark that's out of place. It's, and not to say that it's tidy, because it's not. I mean, you can look at the chaos of this kind of whatever, the neckerchief, just the awesome, it's thick brushwork. It's chaotic. It's quote unquote ugly painting. You keep the brush strokes. You don't go in and smooth everything out and make it look really highly rendered. Like, no, your render comes from your eye filling in the gaps. The viewer always likes to work for their meal. They like to piece things together and notice things. I mean, hell, that's why we're doing a video like this, right? We want to piece this together and figure out why it works so well. And only, in my opinion, only art that is constructed in this way, to where the brushstrokes are really loose and kind of, chaotic and sporadic, it makes me want to solve the puzzle. It makes me want to go in and figure things out. Now, if it's super highly rendered, if it's really kind of every single corner and curve is perfectly polished and sheened, I can be really impressed with the technicalities of it. But for me, there's not a lot of emotional impact, usually. Now, of course, there's pieces out there that will break that rule. that I'll be really invested in, even if it is like refined to a sheen. But primarily, keeping chaotic brushwork like this is critical. My dog's about to bark. Mail just got dropped off, so sorry. But yeah, this is a big deal because it makes me want to know more. It makes me want to look more. But at card art size, this works. It looks like a fully rendered, fully polished piece. And then you come up and look up close, and there's some of that crazy texture brushwork you even see here in the, like, if I were just to show you this, just this right here, and be like, hey, what is this? You wouldn't tell me that this is a tree trunk. I mean, we know it because we know it in context of the piece, but like if I were just to make you a painting and this is what I gave you, and then you're like, what is it? And I'm like, oh, it's a tree trunk. You'd be like, that doesn't look like a tree trunk. But now, you zoom out, you put it in context, now your brain is filling in the gaps. So what's a key lesson to learn from here? Don't be afraid to keep things loose. Don't be afraid to let the viewer do the work for you in a lot of this stuff. Another thing to learn is that Randy Vargas is a genius. I know that's probably not the real takeaway we wanted, but you know, he is. So, I mean, and just little bits of light. And you notice that he doesn't go overboard with this light either. So if I were to come in here, and if my mechanical brain were to take over and be like, well, there's light here and the light's coming here, so wait, well, that doesn't make sense if the light, that's not too light up here. So what I need to do is I need to come up here, and then I'm gonna get my opacity and I'm gonna lower that down because, you know, we need more light up here, because, you know, we need to know where that light's coming from. And then, well, actually here, this is catching the light, so this needs to be a little lighter. So I'm gonna come in here, and I'm gonna do this. You know, anything that, you know, my brain tells me, and I learned this in a thing, anything that faces the light gets the light. So I'm gonna come in here. Oh, and then this is still metal, and this is where the highlight is, so I need to come in here. Let me get that right here. Let me get this. Yeah, I need to get that because that's a highlight right there. Oh, and then, yeah, see, this stuff is facing the light as well. So what I need to do is I need to come in and I need to start adding some more lights here. Oh, well, yeah, that is too. So I need to put this here. That's definitely there because that's facing the light. Oh, yeah, this is facing the light. So that gets it for sure. Then up here, oh, but the cable, you can't really see the cable too much. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and I'm going to kind of add that because, yeah, that pops really well. And then, yeah, and then say, okay, you kind of did it right there, but, you know, oh, well, this right here, some of these folds, they face the light, so I need to come in and sketch some of that. Oh, well, see, this is a really bright purple, so I need to come in, and I actually need to get this purple, because, you know, if that's glowing, this has to glow. And you can do that, but I think the more you start tinkering around and adding crap, it just loses everything that makes it subtle and nuanced. And yeah, I don't know, man. It's such a perfect balance. Such a perfect balance. Yeah, and like, yeah, you can come in and, you know, if your art director gives you feedback, oh, we need a little bit more form. Yeah, you can add some more highlights, add some more shadows and stuff like that. But I think everything comes together so beautifully well because the art director was smart enough to be like, okay, this is subdued enough to really build the mood. Once again, it goes back to mood and, you know, the feeling of a piece. And Randy's such a genius that he knows when to let off the gas. He knows instinctively just how much to put on there. That purple, I would not be brave enough to use this purple Genuinely, I don't think I could do it. I don't think there's a lot of times that I would be like, oh, the sky's completely purple. I'm not that brave, man. It's a very graphic read. This is very designed. I mean, you come in and you look at this. I mean, that is graphic design through and through. That looks like it could be on a guitar. You know what I mean? Genius stuff, man. But that's it. I mean, that's really it, I think. I hope you guys dug this, because I like doing this type of thing. I don't have a chance to do it a lot, so it's something a little bit different for the channel. I do want to say thank you to all of our artists, Randy Vargas, Seb McKinnon, Yara Shermer, and Johannes Voss for making incredible art. Every Magic the Gathering artist is super, super, uber talented, and it is my dream to be up in those ranks one day. But also know, links in the description if you want to buy any of these pieces from the artist directly. So they have, there's our garbage person. Man, I picked a great time to record this video, huh? So, yeah, links in the description. Go purchase these, put them on your wall. These look gorgeous. And, yeah, there's also going to be links in the description if you want to buy the Magic card itself. This was made for a client, and that client is Wizards of the Coast, so I want to show them support as well. But yeah, guys, there's a lot to learn by looking at some of your favorite artists. Keep in mind, all of these type of lessons, whenever you go in, you can study the masters. You can study these people without doing a recreation painting. Now, I will say that's probably the most impactful way to level up fast, is to try to recreate it to the best of your ability. However, if you don't have time for whatever reason, if you're bogged down with work, if you're too stressed, still open something up. Open it up in Procreate. Open it up wherever you're at, with whatever you feel comfortable with, and just start looking at it. What are the colors doing? What are the shapes doing? What's the lighting here? What's the mood? Can I tell what's happening just by glancing at it? Does the name of the card make sense for what the art is showing me? Keep that type of stuff in mind, because that's all problem solving. And I think the more you approach art as the communicative way of visually solving a problem, I think your work's going to get better, because it's going to have purpose. You're going to not feel as wishy-washy about your ideas, because you kind of know what the idea is that you need to get across. So then it just comes down to impacting your visual library, getting more knowledge, finding really good reference, and utilizing that to make some really evocative, impactful images. But that's my time. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Please leave any comments on here. What's your favorite Magic card? I'd love to see it. I could do this all day, every day. I have hundreds of these type of things saved on my hard drive. Maybe thousands, actually. Just as reference, inspiration, all that stuff. So what inspires you? What do you like to look at? Is it the Renaissance painters of the past? Is it some impressionists like the Andrew Zorn and the John Singer Sargents? Like, what do you look at to really get that fulfillment? I kind of love all of it, but really, functional art of design, of card art, is second to none for learning, in my opinion. But yeah, that's it for me. I'll see you guys later. Bye.